My daughter didn't look up from her coloring book when she said it. She just leaned closer, her tiny fingers curling into my sleeve, and whispered, "Daddy." I saw Mom with Mr. Thompson. The way she said his name, quiet, careful, made my stomach drop. Because kids don't whisper about nothing. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my daughter, helping her sound out spelling words. The overhead light cast a soft yellow circle around us, and outside the window the sky was turning that pale blue-gray just before night settles in. The house smelled faintly like tomato sauce. My wife had made pasta, something simple, something routine. My daughter's legs swung back and forth under her chair, her socks brushing against the cabinet doors. She was chewing the end of her pencil, concentrating hard. "Focus," I teased gently, tapping the paper. "You can spell beautiful." "I know you can." She didn't laugh like she usually did. Instead, she glanced toward the living room. Her mother was there, scrolling through her phone, the TV playing low in the background. From where I sat, I could see her profile, the curve of her cheek, the way her hair fell over one shoulder. She looked peaceful. Untouched by anything heavy. That's when my daughter slid off her chair. She didn't say anything at first. She just walked around the table and climbed into my lap, which she hadn't done in a while. She was getting older. More independent. The sudden closeness caught me off guard. Her small hands gripped the fabric of my t-shirt near my chest. "Daddy," she whispered. I smiled, brushing her hair back gently. "Yeah." She leaned closer, so close I could feel her breath against my ear. It tickled. It was warm. It made my heart soften the way it always did when she needed something. I saw Mom with Mr. Thompson. For a second, I didn't understand the sentence. It just hung there between us, light and shapeless. Then it landed. My body reacted before my mind did. My hand, which had been absently rubbing her back, went still. My jaw tightened so subtly I'm not sure anyone else would have noticed. My heartbeat shifted, not racing, just heavier. "With Mr. Thompson." I repeated softly, careful to keep my voice calm. She nodded against my shoulder. "At the park. By the benches." They were sitting really close. Kids don't always know what something means. But they know when something feels different. I forced a small smile and kissed the top of her head. "Okay, sweetheart. Thank you for telling me." She pulled back to look at me, searching my face like she was checking for damage. I kept my expression steady. Warm. Safe. After she slid off my lap and went back to her worksheet, I looked up again. My wife laughed at something on her phone. It was soft, private. Not the loud laugh she used when we watched shows together. This one was quieter. Almost careful. I studied her in a way I hadn't in a long time. The way she crossed her legs. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear. The faint hint of perfume that lingered even now, hours after dinner. Mr. Thompson. 40-something. Recently divorced. Calm, steady voice. The kind of man who always held eye contact a little longer than necessary. I told myself it was nothing. Neighbors talk. Adults sit on benches. People lean in when they're sharing something important. But as I watched my wife's fingers move quickly across her phone screen, a strange tightness settled low in my chest. Because children don't whisper about nothing. And suddenly, the house didn't feel quite as ordinary anymore. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom curtains, catching in my wife's hair as she stood at the mirror. She was fastening a pair of earrings, small gold hoops she hadn't worn in years. I noticed because I used to tell her those were my favorite. "You're up early," I said, keeping my voice light. "Just running a few errands before the stores get busy," she replied, smoothing her blouse over her waist. It was a soft cream color, fitted but elegant. Not flashy. Just intentional. I watched her from the edge of the bed. There was nothing inappropriate about the way she looked. She was beautiful in the quiet way she'd always been, confident, put together, graceful in movements that didn't ask for attention but still drew it. Still, something felt different. Maybe it was the extra swipe of lipstick. Maybe it was the way she checked her phone twice before setting it down. Maybe it was the faint trace of perfume that lingered longer when she leaned down to kiss my cheek. Her lips brushed my skin, soft, familiar, but she pulled away a second sooner than usual. "You'll be home for dinner?" I asked. "Of course," she said with a smile. It reached her lips. I wasn't sure it reached her eyes. After she left, I stood at the window longer than I meant to, watching her walk down the driveway. Mr. Thompson's house was directly across the street. His curtains were open. I hated that I noticed. That afternoon, I stepped outside under the excuse of checking the mail. The air was cool, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass. The neighborhood was quiet, the comfortable kind of suburban calm that usually made me feel safe. Mr. Thompson was in his yard, watering his plants. He looked up when he heard the mailbox shut. "Morning," he called out, offering an easy smile. Up close, he carried himself with the relaxed confidence of someone who had already lived through a few storms. Salt and pepper hair. Faint lines around his eyes. Broad shoulders that filled out a simple gray t-shirt effortlessly. "Hey," I replied, forcing casual. "We met halfway between our houses." He extended his hand. His grip was firm, steady. It lingered half a second longer than necessary. Not aggressive. Not dominant. Just aware. "How's the family?" he asked. "Good," I answered automatically. His eyes flickered, quick, unreadable, toward my front door before returning to mine. There was something in that look. Not guilt. Not exactly. Just familiarity. Later that evening, my wife sat beside me on the couch while our daughter watched cartoons. Her thigh brushed against mine. The contact should have comforted me. Instead, it made me hyper-aware of every inch of space between us. Her phone buzzed softly. She glanced at the screen, and for a split second, just a second, her lips curved into a private smile before she locked it. I swallowed. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just a reminder," she said quickly, setting the phone face down on the coffee table. I nodded. But I couldn't stop replaying my daughter's whisper. They were sitting really close. Now every small detail felt magnified. The way she angled her body away slightly when texting. The way she seemed distracted during dinner. The way silence lingered longer between us at night. I almost asked her then. Almost. But fear held me back. Because suspicion can be harmless. Confirmation can destroy everything. So instead, I watched. And the worst part. I hated the version of myself that was starting to look. It was late afternoon, the kind where the sky turns honey-colored and everything feels slower. I'd left work early, thinking maybe I'd surprise my wife with her favorite coffee before heading home. Something small. Something thoughtful. Maybe close the quiet distance I'd been feeling. The cafe near Maple Street had floor-to-ceiling windows. I'd driven past it 100 times without ever looking inside. This time, I looked. And there she was. She was sitting near the window, sunlight spilling over her shoulders, making her hair glow in that soft way it does at sunset. She looked relaxed. Lighter than she had at home lately. Her posture wasn't guarded or distracted. Across from her sat Mr. Thompson. He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the table, listening, really listening. The kind of listening where your body tilts towards someone without thinking about it. I didn't park right away. I just slowed. Then stopped. From where I sat in my car, I could see them clearly through the glass. Not close enough to hear anything. Just close enough to feel it. She was talking, hands moving gently as she explained something. He smiled, not wide, not smug, just warm. His gaze didn't wander. It stayed on her. And then it happened. Her hand was resting on the table between them. Casual. Open. He said something that made her laugh, that soft, private laugh I'd noticed before, and his fingers brushed against hers. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't desperate. It was light. Almost accidental. But neither of them pulled away right away. Her fingers shifted slightly, not retreating. Just adjusting. The touch lingered. My chest tightened so suddenly I had to grip the steering wheel. My heart wasn't racing. It was pounding, heavy and slow, like each beat had weight. There was no kissing. No dramatic confession. No obvious betrayal. Just two people sitting too close. Leaning in the way people do when the rest of the world fades out. She tucked her hair behind her ear, a nervous habit I knew too well, and he smiled at her like she'd just said something important. Like she mattered. That's what hurt. Not the touch. Not even the closeness. It was the way she looked seen. I could have gone inside. I could have walked up to the table, forced the moment into the open. Instead, I stayed in my car. Watching my wife lean toward another man the way she used to lean toward me. I realized something then: betrayal doesn't always explode. Sometimes it unfolds quietly. Softly. In polite cafes with warm lighting and background music you can't quite hear. After a minute, or maybe 10, I honestly don't know, I started the engine again. Neither of them noticed me. As I drove away, the image stayed burned into my mind, her fingers resting near his. The way the space between them felt smaller than it should have been. The sun dipped lower in my rearview mirror. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of being wrong. I was afraid of being right. We went through dinner like we always did. Our daughter talked about a spelling quiz. My wife nodded, smiled, asked questions. I watched the way her fingers curled around her glass of water. The way she avoided looking at her phone. It almost felt normal. Almost. By the time our daughter was asleep, the house had settled into that fragile nighttime quiet. The dishwasher hummed softly in the kitchen. The hallway light cast a dim glow across the living room carpet. She was sitting on the couch when I walked in. Barefoot. Sweater sleeves pulled down over her hands. The TV was on, but muted. I didn't sit right away. I saw you today, I said gently. Her eyes lifted to mine. Where? At the cafe on Maple. There it was, that flicker. Not shock. Not outrage. Recognition. Silence stretched between us, thin and sharp. I finally sat down, leaving space between us. Not too much. Just enough to feel it. You want to tell me about it? I asked. She inhaled slowly, her shoulders rising and falling. For a moment, she looked older than I'd ever seen her, not in appearance, but in weight. Like something had been sitting on her chest for a long time. We've been talking, she said quietly. Talking, I repeated. Yes. Her fingers twisted into the fabric of her sweater. A nervous gesture. One I hadn't noticed in years because she hadn't needed it in years. It started after he moved in, she continued. He'd come over to return packages or ask about the neighborhood. We just talked. About what? Life. Marriage. Feeling stuck. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. That word hit harder than anything else. Stuck. I asked, my throat tightening. She nodded, eyes glossy now. I didn't mean for it to become anything. She paused, searching for language that wouldn't destroy us. I felt invisible sometimes. Like I was just running the house. Being mom. Being your support system. And I didn't know how to say that without sounding ungrateful. I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling for a second. Invisible. I thought about the nights I'd come home exhausted and gone straight to my laptop. The times she'd started to tell me something and I'd half listened. The way I'd stopped reaching for her hand without even realizing it. Did you? I swallowed. Did it become more than talking? She shook her head quickly. No. Not like that. But she didn't say it wasn't emotional. She didn't say she hadn't leaned in. I saw him touch her hand, I said softly. Her breath caught. Tears welled up, but she didn't let them fall. I didn't pull away, she admitted. That hurt. Honest. Clean. We were sitting inches apart, yet it felt like miles. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. I know. And I did. That was the worst part. There was no screaming. No shattered glass. Just two people sitting in the dim light, realizing they had let something precious grow quiet between them. After a long pause, I stood. I'm going to sleep on the couch tonight, I said, not as punishment, just distance. She nodded, wiping her cheek with the heel of her hand. When the bedroom door closed behind her, the house felt heavier. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of her moving upstairs. For the first time in years, we weren't just tired. We were fractured. I was in the driveway, pretending to reorganize the garage. Really, I was just trying to stay busy, trying not to replay the cafe window in my head for the 100th time. The knock wasn't loud. Just firm. Certain. When I turned, Mr. Thompson was standing at the edge of my driveway, hands in his jacket pockets. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement, and for a second, neither of us spoke. Up close, he looked more tired than I remembered. The lines around his eyes deeper. His posture still straight, confident, but there was tension in his jaw. Can we talk? He asked. I considered saying no. Instead, I nodded toward the side yard. Yeah. We walked a few steps away from the house, far enough that our voices wouldn't carry through the open windows. The air was cool, carrying that faint scent of fallen leaves and damp earth. It felt like something was ending, even if I didn't know what yet. He kept a respectful distance between us. Not defensive. Not aggressive. Just careful. I think you know, he started. I saw you at the cafe, I said evenly. He exhaled slowly, eyes lowering for a moment before meeting mine again. I figured. Silence settled between us, not hostile, just heavy. I want you to understand something, he continued. I never set out to cross a line. Did you? I asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair, a gesture that made him look less composed, more human. I'm divorced, he said finally. That kind of loneliness, it sneaks up on you. You start missing being seen. Being heard. Your wife, he paused, choosing his words carefully. She's easy to talk to. The words tightened something in my chest. She's my wife, I replied. I know. His voice softened, no challenge in it. And she talks about you. A lot. That caught me off guard. She does. He nodded. She doesn't want to lose you. That much is clear. The tension between us shifted slightly. It wasn't two rivals circling each other. It was two men standing in uncomfortable truth. I should have stepped back sooner, he admitted. When I realized it wasn't just friendly. You touched her hand, I said, not accusing, just stating. His jaw flexed. Yeah. No denial. I didn't mean it to feel like something, he added. But it did. The honesty landed harder than any excuse would have. For a moment, we just stood there, the quiet suburban street behind us, kids' bikes scattered across lawns, a dog barking faintly in the distance. Ordinary life continuing while something fragile hung in the balance. I'm not your enemy, he said after a pause. But I understand if you see me that way. I studied him, the steady posture, the regret he wasn't trying to hide. What surprised me most wasn't anger. It was recognition. He wasn't trying to steal my life. He was trying to fill a hollow in his own. And somehow, my wife had been standing in that hollow. I need you to give us space, I said finally. My voice was calm, but it carried weight. He nodded immediately. You have my word. For a second, we just looked at each other, not as opponents, but as men who both understood how easily connection can blur into something more. Then he stepped back. Take care of your family, he said quietly. I watched him walk back across the street, shoulders still straight, but slower somehow. And for the first time since this started, my anger didn't feel sharp. It felt complicated. I was sitting at the kitchen table again, the same place where the whisper had started all of this. The overhead light felt harsher now. Too bright for the kind of conversation waiting between us. She didn't sit across from me. She sat beside me. Close enough that our arms almost touched, but not quite. I heard he spoke to you, she said quietly. He did. Her fingers traced small, anxious circles on the wood surface of the table. I remembered that gesture from years ago, back when we were dating, when she'd get nervous before saying something vulnerable. I need to tell you the rest, she whispered. My chest tightened, but I nodded. There wasn't an affair, she said firmly. No hotel rooms. No secrets like that. I believed her. But, I asked gently. Her breath trembled. But I started looking forward to seeing him. The honesty hurt more than if she'd softened it. He'd ask about my day, she continued. Not just how the house was. Not just if the bills were paid. He'd ask how I was. And he'd listen. Each word felt like a mirror. I thought about the nights I'd scrolled through emails while she talked about her frustrations. The times she'd tried to tell me she felt overwhelmed and I'd responded with solutions instead of understanding. I didn't realize how lonely I felt, she admitted. Not until someone made me feel visible again. There it was. Not lust. Not thrill. Visibility. She finally turned to look at me, and her eyes were glossy but steady. I never stopped loving you. I swallowed. But you let someone else stand in the space where I was supposed to be. A tear slipped down her cheek at that. She didn't wipe it away. Yes, she said. The word hung heavy between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Ordinary sounds wrapping around an extraordinary fracture. I think, I said slowly, the betrayal isn't that you sat close to him. She held her breath. It's that we stopped sitting close to each other. Her face crumpled slightly at that. I remembered how she used to fall asleep on my chest when we first moved into this house. The way her fingers would trace lazy circles over my shirt. The way I used to pull her into random hugs in the kitchen, just because I wanted to feel her there. When had I stopped doing that? When had she stopped asking for it? I was angry, I admitted quietly. But I've also been absent. You weren't absent, she said quickly. I was, I insisted, softer. Maybe not physically. But emotionally. I got comfortable. The silence this time felt different. Less sharp. More honest. Carefully, I turned my hand over on the table, palm up. An offering. She stared at it for a second, hesitation flickering across her face. Not because she didn't want to take it, but because she didn't know if she deserved to. Finally, her finger slid into mine. Her touch was warm. Familiar. Slightly trembling. The contact was simple, just intertwined hands, but it felt heavier than any dramatic gesture could have. I don't want to lose us, she whispered. Then we don't, I replied. But we can't ignore this either. She nodded. And as our fingers tightened around each other, I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. The real betrayal wasn't the other man. It was the quiet distance we'd allowed to grow between us. And distance, unlike infidelity, can be closed if both people are willing to reach. Our daughter was asleep. The house was quiet again, but this time, the silence didn't feel sharp. It felt open. Like something had been aired out. She wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself as she sat down beside me on the top step. Not too close at first. Just near enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence. The night air was cool against my skin. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and then settled. The world kept moving, unaware that ours had nearly split in two. I talked to him, I said gently. She nodded. He told me. There was no panic in her voice. No defensiveness. Is he going to stay away? She asked. Yes. A quiet exhale left her lips, not relief exactly, but acceptance. For a few moments, we just sat there, shoulders almost brushing. The scent of her shampoo drifted toward me when the breeze shifted. It was the same one she'd used for years. I'd stopped noticing it until now. I didn't realize how far apart we'd gotten, she admitted softly. I looked at her profile in the porch light. The faint lines near her eyes. The strength in her posture even when she was vulnerable. She wasn't fragile. She never had been. But she was human. I said. I just didn't want to admit it. She turned to me then, searching my face. Were you going to leave? The question hung between us. I don't know, I answered honestly. I was hurt. And pride can be loud when you're hurt. Her hand shifted slightly on the step between us. Close enough that I could see the faint tremor in her fingers. Instinctively, I reached for her. This time, there was no hesitation. Her hand slid into mine naturally, like it had been waiting. Our fingers intertwined, fitting together with a familiarity that hadn't disappeared, just been neglected. She moved closer, slowly, until her shoulder rested against my arm. The contact was soft. Careful. I missed this, she whispered. So did I. After a moment, she leaned her head against my shoulder. The weight of it, gentle, trusting, hit me harder than any argument had. I lifted my free arm and wrapped it around her waist, pulling her just a little closer. Not possessive. Not desperate. Grounded. Her body relaxed against mine. I could feel her breathing steady, matching mine little by little. I never wanted someone else, she murmured. I just wanted to feel chosen. I pressed my lips to her temple, slow, lingering. The kind of kiss that doesn't ask for anything. The kind that promises something instead. I choose you, I said quietly. Not because it's easy. But because it's you. Her fingers tightened around mine. We stayed like that for a long time, two people who had almost lost each other, now sitting close enough to hear each other breathe. The past week didn't disappear. The hurt didn't magically dissolve. But something stronger settled in its place. Intentional love. When we finally stood to go back inside, she didn't let go of my hand. And this time, neither did I.